Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it.
It's like having your own portable studio, you know, with all the sliders and everything. But I just
But it's got to be set up just right.
Yeah, and I just don't need it to be that complicated.
Well, that's I think that's a metaphor for modern life, my friend.
It is. Even my son, who's like, you know, he's just turning 40, and he's like, it's the same for him. It's like, it's, you know, you think, oh, younger people can figure it out better, and it's not any better for anybody.
No.
It's just bizarre. The whole thing is bizarre. Everything is bizarre now.
Yeah, it's a bizarro time. It's bizarro world.
It is, but we're being recorded now, so we need to keep all of our personal opinions to ourselves.
Well, I don't think there's any harm in acknowledging the fact that these are bizarre times. People may disagree as to why or the how or how you get out of it. I don't think it's an easy solution, because I don't think anything is easy anymore.
I think
we've created a society that's a little too complicated for us to manage it well.
Well, that's it. That's like, you know, my cars. I've had my current model of car for 3 years, and I love the car. Love the car. 3 years later, guy calls me up and says, "Hey, I got a heck of a deal. I can replace your car for X number of dollars." And I said, and the one it's got like 65,000 miles on it. I said, honestly, Stacy, there's nothing wrong with the one I got. You know, it's like it works fine, just like the day I drove it, so I don't need to replace it. But like, I only just realized I could switch. It has this very complicated stereo system where you can listen to your phone, you can listen to all sorts of different things, and you got to go into here and you turn on audio, and then you do this. It's very cool when you get it working, but you'll think, geez, I wanted to listen to Sirius Radio. Oh, it's a commercial. I'm driving on long distance. I think now I'll listen to my phone and listen to some music or the podcast. And I went through this complicated way of changing from one to the other. And I suddenly realized, like 2 months ago, oh, if I just push this button, it'll change itself. And it's like, I've had the car for 3 years.
And you know, as soon as I got the new computer for the OC, the first thing I did with the guy that's helped me install it was make it look like Windows 10, because I didn't want all the Windows 11. Like, if it works, I'm good. I don't need the new kind of jeans. I don't need, you know, new flashy clothing. I'm pretty good with what works. I can buy 3 or 4 of them, and then I'll have a new one in a couple of years, and that's it. I'm not a complicated situation.
And the problem is, these big companies, the junior engineers, they make things, you know, if you do this, every third bump, the car will do that. And it's like, no, we don't need that.
Right.
We don't need that. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
You should. We've learned that lesson before. That's a model rareting constant too.
It is. It's a part of what's making the hobby more complicated. Although generally, I feel like the hobby, well, everybody knows, I think the hobby's growing like crazy.
Growing and getting better. And yes, it's more complicated, and yes, it's not, you know, yeah, everybody gets tired of computer stuff. When you put a computer on the layout, now you got to deal with that aspect. But there is, what you can do on your railroad was a complete fantasy 20 years ago. And it was unimaginable 40 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
It remains a super exciting time. And that in and of itself is such a wonderful relief, because again, these are wild times. It's easy to get wound up about things we can't control. And the hobby is still something that we can control. We can go down to our railroad and make something better.
No, I think you said it perfectly there a few months ago when you said the thing about model railroading and your layout and your hobby is it's always there like a faithful dog. You know, it's if you ignore it for 2 years and you go back to it, it's like sitting there going, panting, going, oh, okay, let's do something. You know, like it's
exactly right. Exactly right. And I mean, to have gotten into this at a young age is what a blessing. It's a great opportunity.
Well, yeah. And I was talking to you somewhere along the way. I was saying, you know, you got a responsibility because at your age of 47, you got another 30, 35 years of interacting with people. And I forget, I think maybe we were talking on great layouts or the horseshoe curve.
I think it was the horseshoe curve one. Yeah. And I mean, that fact remains. There's no question that with the honor of being able to contribute at a high level and having a name that's familiar to people now, in most cases around the hobby, there's absolutely a responsibility that comes with that. Yeah, it's something else you're doing in a leadership role, at least to some degree. And with that comes people that don't agree with you. It comes people that see things differently. It comes with people that are feeling ignored or feeling left out. And all of those people are still very much part of the community. So how do you be that bridge? How do you create that bridge to keep people moving in a positive direction in the hobby?
And I think
it's a central question.
I think how that conversation came about is I kind of feel like I have a connection that a lot of people don't have. Like a lot of people never got to operate on Alan McClellan's railroad. A lot of people never met Andy Sprandio or Lynn Westcott or Russ Larson or all that whole 60s, 70s era of model railroading, in which I got to be a part of. And then we came around to, I think the next one is your connection right at, the late 80s, early 90s, where you connected with, the Conrail and all that. And you kind of have that connection that anybody that's 30 or older doesn't have that real-time connection with. And I think that was the next great change, right? The 80s, 90s, when video cameras started to become popular, and digital cameras were becoming accessible, and it was easier to take rail fanning photos and stuff like that. But before that, you've got boxes and boxes of slides that you'd love to someday scan and have available on your computer. But it's a massive job to do that.
It is. Look, even just scanning a handful. I was looking at the pictures for the collection for the yard book, and even just with the couple spots in there that I wanted to fill in the blanks, I was like, oh, well, I've got all sorts of shots of DeWitt and Selkirk, back in the 90s, and I had to go find the slides, and they're all chronologically ordered, but that means they're chronological, not by location or train symbol or railroad. Like I just labeled them as they came along, and they're all labeled. Train symbols, I did a good job keeping up with slide labeling, but I've never gone through and classified them by year. By locale. So I had to it's like, oh yeah, I know I went to Selkirk when I was a sophomore in college. And I went to DeWitt all the time. So I dug up a couple slides, cleaned them up, scanned them. It's like a good half an hour, 45 minutes per slide between finding it, scanning it, cleaning up the image, labeling it, and saving it. And, I think I probably have about 11,000 slides in my collection, but it's 11,000. I never threw any of them out because I'm a modeler. And that's a funny thing. A major difference between prototype photographers, railfan photographers, hardcore railfan photographers, and modelers is that every good photographer will tell you his most important tool is the wastebasket. Knowing what not to show other people. And then there's the modelers, and like that crappy shot where your shutter got stuck and you turned around and you took a going away shot, and it was the only time you got the back end of an SD-35 fuel tank. Because when you're a modeler going into it, that those kind of images are important for modeling. So I never threw any of it out. I've got I've got just about every slide I've ever taken upstairs. But I've only scanned probably 20 of them total.
Yeah, and like I say, you were right at that cusp of when you were taking slides. You can't even imagine. You couldn't possibly have imagined that just a few short years later, you could be walking around with something in your pocket that would be like the size of a small wallet and pull it out of your pocket and take all kinds of rail fanning pictures. You couldn't even imagine it. So you're out there.
Decent ones.
Yeah.
Right?
And
there was always the point and shoot. Point and shoot was been around forever. But to get a shot of the quality that you could show other people, almost every cell phone today can do that unless you're zooming in too much. And that's amazing. So yeah, I never could have imagined not only having the ability to do it, but also having the ability to process it myself on Photoshop. You know, the ability to take a photograph and then, like Ansel Adams, go into your dark room and make the sky more contrasty, or brighten up the highlights, or darken the shadows, or vice versa, or raise the contrast through one part of the image but not the other. Ansel Adams did all of that stuff in his dark room with black and white photography. One of the greatest black and white photographers, most common names in the hobby, right? Well, now every rail fan with a digital camera or an iPhone can do that. And modern iPhones, you can do it right on the camera, right on the phone itself. You can edit photography and crop and embellish things and darken things and turn pink signals red, because they should be. Like, you can do it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what you can do.
Where do you fit in on the question of editing photographs away from the original?
I fit in with our friend Otto Vondrak, who, as a regular listener here on the old AML, and also as the editor of Rare Model Craftsman magazine, did a really nice podcast with you about a year ago, I would say, where you guys talked about photography. And I thought this is one of the great things about A Modeler's Life. It's got access to high-end people to interview like that. People that have done something in the hobby, something important, right? And because of the, salty commentary and the witty questions that come from the evil overlord, you actually get to the heart of the matter fairly quickly with some of these people. And so to sit on a podcast and hear the editor of one of the two major magazines in the hobby and the associate editor of one of the two major prototype magazines in the hobby tell you what he's looking for in photography, I mean, talk about an opportunity. Anybody that listens to that podcast episode is going to get the basics of what they need to learn to get themselves published. That's not an exclusive thing. There's things editors look for. If you can find a way to make your photographs fit that mold and still be compelling to you as the person taking it, as the artist, well, you have a shot. You have a shot that could actually be published. And you can make a difference for somebody else who's reading the magazine, which is an awesome opportunity. So when I heard that podcast, I agree with Otto entirely. I think when it comes to prototype photography, it's much more the ethic of the whole thing is that what you're taking pictures of is a historical reference for that location, that time, that train. So if you're removing wires, you've got to be very careful. If you're, adding a thunderstorm or adding mountain backdrops or changing a faded locomotive to robust colors and all of these things, both trains and rare model, or trains and railfan and railroad, I should say, along with CTC board, classic trains, they represent themselves as historical documents. These are magazines that are illustrating part of history for the readers. And if you're taking a picture of a place where you Photoshop in the station that used to be there, or you Photoshop in trees to cover up the ugly power plant in the background, you're leading a viewer or a reader to believe that they can go and make that same image or a similar one, and they can't unless they know how to do that stuff in Photoshop. So I think that that's a misleading approach. I have no problem with cropping a photograph to fit where it's going to fit in the publishing thing. I don't have a problem if someone's going to Photoshop out a piece of litter, something you can go walk and remove by yourself. Right. An old cup or a wrapper that I should have moved that. I forgot about it. Okay, but changing the entire complexion of a photograph, you can do it if you'd like, but then it becomes a railroad image, not a historical photograph. And it just needs to be called out, I think, when you do that. And I think that, again, Otto's point with modeling is that it's different. Model railroading is all about illusion. It's all about creating an image that evokes certain emotions. And the whole idea of modeling a prototype is that it's a model. It's a replication. And I think that there's a lot more latitude. So, changing a sky out in your photograph of your models, I always appreciate it when the artist tells you what he's doing, because I think it's interesting. But I think there's a lot more space for that. It's a lot. The rules are a lot softer, I think, with model railroading.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because, like I took a photo. I was looking at a photo. Actually, it was a slide photo, and I uploaded it on my computer, and it was a great photo of one part of my layout, except in the top, 20% in the top left-hand corner, the ceiling was there. And I thought, maybe I can just, fill in this with sky. It just took the same sky paint and it changed the whole photo, and it looked so much more real. And then it's like, well, it's a model railroad anyways. It's not real. It's not really West Virginia. It's a model of West Virginia. So
exactly. And I know people take exception to that. And, to some degree, you've got to remember that what's out there on the prototype is actually happening in real life. That's a real life experience. Model railroading is always modeling something that's in real life. Operations is a great way to bring it to life, and detailing or scratch building a locomotive or car or structure is a wonderful active hobby. I'm not diminishing it in any way, but it's still a model of something else. And so if you can change a photograph to better model or replicate something that you've seen on the prototype, that's actually, to me, part of model railroading, is learning how to modify photographs so that they tell your story a little bit better. Yeah.
Speaking of actual things, a few weeks ago, on November 25th, it came out. It was actually turned out to be a podcast that was kind of like a fans / we had questions for Brad Williamson about his talking track detector, and then we talked to all sorts of people about all sorts of things. But in that conversation, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Because Scott was on there, our buddy Scott Lister, the table master.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't forget, when you get to, when we get to Springfield, with our 4 tables, you have the 4th one. But you got to remember that Scott is in fact the final say on the booth. He's the guy that's in charge of the booth. So when you're setting up, you got to pass everything through the table master.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. We have to see how the maps are all set up, right? Wasn't there a chance that we're gonna? We don't know. We don't quite know how it's going to get laid out this year.
Exactly.
Because I know the Station Inn is. I think they're on the table list. The OC is on the table list. Mother's Life is on the table list, and I'm curious.
Where did you see that?
Well, I just heard that they were going to apply.
I think they applied. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, we'll figure it
out. So let's just say. Hey, Scott, we're gonna roll with the situation, and we'll see how things turn out. But one way or the other, I'm not worried about the alliance between the AML, the Station Inn, and the Onondaga Cutoff. This is still a wonderful trifecta, like the bolts on a roller bearing. It just rolls on and on and on.
StationInPA.com.
That's it.
And do you think the guys from Rapido Trains?
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
Ever stayed there?
I don't think they have yet. We've got to get them. Jason loves to watch trains on passenger railroads, which I don't blame him. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on in the passenger railroading world these days. But the Station Inn is really unique.
It sure is.
I think those guys would really enjoy it.
Oh, they'd go nuts for it. I mean, I understand why you enjoyed it so much when Tom Davis was running it. Like, I fully understand that, and I fully appreciate what he created. But I'm not sure there could have been a better guy to carry on than Alex and his wife.
I'm thrilled with the way this is working out. They have just the right attitude. They have the right approach to risk. They're excited about taking some chances and seeing if they can improve the place. They want to keep it in the flavor of what Tom had always done. And I think we're all everybody that's familiar with the place is very happy that's how that's being approached. But at the same time, time marches on, and Tom himself, I think, would want to see certain things have been updated and changed. And so I'm thrilled. And Alex, he's a guy that sticks his neck out for other people when he sees something like this. He wants to bring everybody along for the ride. And it's really exciting to see him and Leah doing such a thorough job here. In fact, they're looking to have try and reopen a restaurant in the basement for the first time in, 15 years. I think that closed in like 2006. So it's even more than 15 years. So very exciting times. Lots going on down there. And again, you really owe it to yourself. And actually, a great time to stay there is the winter. It's this big, snuggly hotel where from inside the common room's big, huge front window, you can kick back in an easy chair and watch trains go by in the snow.
Oh, so do you? So that's where because I've been trying to think to myself, I don't see that being much fun in the winter, but so that's what you do. You watch the trains from inside.
You can do that from inside. Some people bundle up and go sit on the porch, or you can walk up to one of the restaurants along the main line. But there's also a lot of great winter photography out there. Winter in the United States in the last couple of years has been much less consistent. There's been less snow. Cold has been spotty. But if there's any place that's going to be cold and snowy, it's going to be the top of the Allegheny Mountains in western Pennsylvania. So it's a good spot to go in the dead of winter when you want to get some snow shots. And again, they have discounts in the wintertime, and it's a great experience one way or the other.
So anyways, I think Alex is, I've never had the pleasure of meeting his wife, but I think Alex is, and if she's anything, I think the two of them are going to do a great job. I'm really looking forward to it. And Alex is a fun guy to talk to and everything. So anyways, we're talking to Scott. Scott's on this call, on this particular podcast. And we get around to how Scott has, promised. Now he's decided he's going to tear his layout out and he's going to build a new layout and blah, blah, blah. Then he's
whole new scrapyard. Yeah, I saw that.
No. On this particular podcast, he's talking about tearing out the whole layout and building a whole new layout. And we're like, no, you're not doing that. And so then the conversation got around to, Scott, you promised everybody and his brother a building. And I said, you got a whole town you got to build for Uncle Dave. And he goes, oh, I've been talking to Uncle Dave on the phone. And his next station is going to be done. And I'm like, done when? And he says, oh, it'll be done for Springfield. And it's like, no, it won't. Yes, it will.
Well, one of the things that you got to remember is that, central New York is not exactly the land of giant train terminals. The one in downtown Syracuse was pretty huge in its day, but everything else up there is fairly small. And so Fayetteville, which is a small suburb of Syracuse, essentially, is not going to have a station anywhere close to the massive structures that he's built for some other people. In fact, it's going to be quite a bit smaller than the Sherwood. So he's made some good progress on it so far. His skill in envisioning how to cut wood to make the special braces that go under the gables of some of these stations, the roof supports. My goodness, I mean, it's just a work of art.
There is no doubt that Scott may be one of the most prolific and best model builders I've ever met. But his golly gosh down home, oh, well, how it is, thing where he's always going out looking for first places so he can, say, well, it's, and now he's going to build this station. And we're like, Scott, you're never going to get, no, it'll be done. And it's like, you still haven't delivered Tom Jacobs his station yet. So don't get your hopes up too much.
We'll see. Tom Jacobs, though, wanted him to build a cathedral. That station is gigantic.
Well, yeah, but Scott promised to build your whole town, and I've been prodding him. And so far, we've got one building out of him.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, it's all right. He's got a couple other ones started. And a good chunk of the downtown also is not custom scratch-built basewood buildings. So I think the rest of Fayetteville will flow considerably more quickly once we get these two key structures in place. And the Sherwood is here. I still have to kind of figure out how I'm going to like. I know where I want it, but I'm not sure it's the best spot for it aesthetically. So at some point, he and his family may be coming up to New York to go on a
Yeah,
cruise.
that's why and he says, "Oh, we're going from our cruise. I'm going to visit Dave." And I'm like, "I thought we were going on a cross-country bus trip together." Oh, well. And then I hear that he doesn't like to drive his bus in the heat. And I'm like, "Well, why?" And it's like and then he says, "Oh, well, I'm going to visit Dave." And I'm like, "Why am I not aware of this? If it hadn't been for me, you two guys would never even talk to each other. Why am I so?" And
because there's no cruise to Bermuda from Toronto. My
well,
friend.
and then he goes, "I'm going on a cruise to Bermuda from New Jersey," and I'm like, "What, on a garbage barge or something?"
No, they've actually got quite a port now in Bayonne for a lot of big ships that go out of there.
Bayonne, New Jersey.
The old Navy Yard there is a huge cruise ship depot.
Okay, and is Tony Soprano there too?
He might be.
Yeah.
And you might find who's the mobster that's supposed to be buried in the swamp.
Oh, Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa, right? Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, maybe
he's there too.
I'll tell you one thing you won't find on the garbage barge cruise out of New Jersey: Rapido Trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
Okay. So my next question is: did you have any subjects you wanted to talk about?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
But the night is still young.
Well, we only got about an hour left.
Yeah,
We've already chewed up through 30 minutes, so we only got like an hour left.
It goes quick, doesn't it? We had so much fun.
I know. Explain to me what is so great about Rapido's E8s. Why is everybody so excited about E8s?
Well, I think for many years, the passenger side of railroading was very much constrained to the Athearn Blue Box stuff and to Cato and Bachman, or Bachman, I'm not sure how you say that. But in any case, when Cato came out with this stuff in the 80s, they came out with an F40 PH, an N scale. I think they did an E unit, although I could be wrong about that. It was done with sort of a 80s, 90s tooling. It was state of the art back then. But then, it's been a long time since the 1990s. It's hard to believe that 1994, the year of the OC, is 30 years ago. It's about to be 31 years ago. Isn't that wild? People think, oh, the OC is so modern. No, it's 30 years old.
Exactly. It's 30 years old.
I mean, the prototype is. So it's.
I understand that. But that's that takes me back to my conversation, though, about how you and I both have this kind of weird connection. I'm connected to all the time. I can reach out and touch memories from the people from the 50s and 60s and 70s. And then you're at this weird time. You're next where you're at this weird time where you got 11,000 slides, but you wouldn't take a picture on film now to save your life. And you were right there. You were really starting to come into your own at the end of at the beginning of the 90s and the change from Conrail. And I mean, I really started to understand that conversation when we were talking to our Todd Treester.
Yep. Now the timing for that was uncanny.
Yeah.
Absolutely uncanny. And it's nice, one of the cool things about the hobby is that as time goes on here, I mean, anybody can drop an email to almost anybody in the hobby at this point. And so, talking to Steve King or Tony Custer, those are the two guys that worked with Alan McClellan to come up with the Allegheny, that whole concept of the, what do they call it? I'm drawing a blank. Allegheny Midland was Tony's, Virginia Midland, and then the Virginia and Ohio, the Appalachian lines.
Yeah.
That's right, the Appalachian lines. They had a modeled merger with their freelance railroads. It's such a neat idea. And you can still talk to 2/3 of that equation, which is pretty darn good, considering these guys were modeling in the 60s. And it's 2020 and 2024, and you can still talk to both of these gentlemen, and they're eager to share. It's as we've seen here on the podcast before, which is great.
Well, and the other thing I remember from, I'd taken that mandatory break from the hobby, maybe for 5 years. And then in 1980, I was getting back into it hot and heavy. And I bought one of those Atlas yellow box Cato drive units thinking, to be back, I was still stuck back in knowing what Athearn was like. and I put that on the track. I know I've said it 1,000 times, and I thought, oh my God,
Like
what
butter. Like
Yeah.
butter. Unbelievable.
Then that's 44 years ago, and those locomotives still run like the day I bought them.
They do. And this is where Rapido's E8 comes in to save the day. So, and it's not just the E8. I mean, Rapido's F40PH, Rapido's come out with the RDCs. The turbo train was never done before. The United turbo train is coming up. That's going to be released very shortly, if not already. They've got all sorts of passenger cars, including a bunch that are custom detailed on the bottom for various and sundry railroads and eras. What Cato did in the 90s is what Rapido's doing in the 2020s. They've taken the F40s, the E units, the RDCs, and they've fast forwarded 30 years. Now, Rapido's E units are 3D scanned. Nobody guessed at the nose. This was the actual scan of the UPE unit nose from Cheyenne. And it's got the actual wheelbase and new trucks that are designed to fit the frame. It's got different fans on the top to represent different eras. It's got different lights. It's got a sound decoder. It's got a keep alive inside. It's got, marker lights and ground lights. It's got the right horns. It's got grab irons that represent different engines as they went through the different careers. They're doing the commuter versions with the HEP, the head end power, which powers the electric coaches, which was added later. A lot of these were built with steam generators to power the steam coaches back in the late steam era. So it's Rapido's E unit is the first modern E unit available to the hobby in 30 years. And it's a work of art. It's a beautiful model.
You said it was the UP. They usually lasered the UPE unit. Which one was that? What's UPE?
They 3D scanned. I don't know if it was 951 or 953.
You mean UPE is Union Pacific?
Correct.
What is E? What does the E stand for?
E is that's the classification from the EMD model designation. So the F unit, the full width body with the rounded face, we're all familiar with the 4 axles. The E unit is the 6-axle version of that, designed for high-speed passenger service as opposed to freight service.
So is that the major difference between an F7 and an E8 is that one is 3-axle, one is 2-axle?
On each truck. Yeah, one is a 4-axle locomotive and one is a 6-axle locomotive. That's actually the only difference with a good chunk of that series, E versus F.
But F units are shorter too, right?
Correct. Yep.
Did they have more horsepower in an E8?
No, the number matched the horsepower rating. So all E8s, I believe, were 2,400 horsepower. And I think all F7s were also... Oh, no, those Fs were less. So that's a good question. I don't know.
Oh.
That's a good question. I should probably be more familiar with that. But one of the things about E units, because of the long frame and the extra axle, they could be heavier and not exceed the axle rating. And so E units actually had 2 prime movers inside.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is because of the length. So an F unit,
forward and a back. So I think a lot of E units had 2 1,200 horsepower prime movers. F units would have one 1,700 horsepower prime mover.
1,500.
Or 1,500 horsepower, depending on the F unit. Yep.
Well, the EMD F7 is a model of 1,500 horsepower diesel electric locomotive produced between February 49 and December 53.
There you go. And then that went on to be the F9, which had upgraded innards but looked very similar on the outside. Some different fans, but that's about it.
Okay. So
F unit spotting is a whole subcategory of the hobby.
Yeah, because the F9 was only 1,750 horsepower, so it wasn't really much of a horsepower upgrade.
No, not too much. But as time went on, they found all sorts of things to upgrade. EMD at that time was a juggernaut of customer service and technology. And they would go out and talk to the crews, talk to the frontline managers on the railroad, talk to railroad executives to find out what worked from the previous run. And then they would change it and add to it for the next run of whatever they were coming out with.
So the build date on an F7 is February 49 to December 53, with almost 2,400 A units and 1,500 B units. But if you go to an F9, their build date was 53 to 60, but they only built 101 A units and 150 B units. So it's like from 2,400 A units on the F7 to 100 A units on the F9.
Well, there was a race to dieselize after World War II,
Right.
and a lot of railroads dieselized their passenger trains first because it was cleaner. They required less servicing, less engine changes. And so the F unit and the early E units were largely there to bolster passenger fleets. Many railroads used them in freight as well, especially as time went on. But once they got to be 1953, 54, 55, towards 1960, railroads were starting to prefer the hood unit, which is what we're familiar with as every locomotive that has the handrails all the way down the sides and the short hood and the long hood with the cab towards one end. So the hood unit, that's your GP7, GP9 with a high short hood, but then the GP20, 30, 40, so on and so forth, as well as the U25B, U28B, and the Alco C4. The RS11 was the early one, but then they went to the Century series, like C420s, C424s, 25s, and so on and so forth. So the whole industry shifted away from the full width car body, with the notable exception of Canadian National.
It'd be interesting to know. I've often been fascinated, and I've always wondered. I mean, the F unit and the E unit and the F9, they have this incredibly unique rounded nose and full car body. Like, I wonder who came up with the design.
That's actually fairly well documented in industrial history. They had actual industrial engineer people come in. EMD had a whole art department just to design paint schemes for that nose. And so most of the railroads, actually, the paint jobs applied to their F units and E units, most of them came from the EMD art department. I mean, this is one factory in LaGrange, Illinois. Can you imagine a factory that made 1,500 locomotives and then 2,000 locomotives to match it, all in 4 years? Think about the scale of how many people were employed there. It's staggering.
And
it's amazing.
The E8 was made from 49 to 54, August 49, January 54, and there's 450 of those A units and 46 B units. So, I mean, basically, there was like 3,000 between F7, F9, and an E8. There was like 3,000 A units made and about 1,700 B units.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge number one way or the other. And amazingly, all those E unit and F units, those rounded noses, it's sheet metal, but they bondoed each one individually. So each of those noses was hand shaped.
Wow.
To be smooth. And the consistency and the craftsmanship it's unbelievable.
Well, then when you think about, okay, so then when you go full circle back to Rapido Trains.
Your fast track for model railroading fun.
Rapido Trains, your fast track to model railroading fun.
The fact that they lasered the Union Pacific E unit, you took out and lasered it so it was an exact replica of that unit is really, it's an exact replica of one particular E unit.
They all had slight variations. It's true. And one of the things you got to remember is that still doesn't change the fact that this is the first one that's actually been 3D scanned. So it's much closer overall to all of them than anything that came before it. And as predictable, there's always the negative Nancy's. Oh, hey, look at this. The headlight doesn't stick up far enough. Oh, it's too flat. It doesn't look anything like an E unit. And then 2 weeks later, you never hear from those guys again. And Rapido sells 1,000 of the models and life is good. So, that's the long and short of it with Rapido's E8 and with anything Rapido is doing these days. And frankly, with anything that's being done by Scale Trains or Athearn Genesis, there's always a couple little things you could change. But these models are absolutely the best models ever created of the prototypes that they're trying to model. Out of the box, it's a breathtaking experience. It is so much fun to pull one of these things out of the box and look at it for the first time. I do that on my Patreon channel now and again. we'll have an unboxing video. We did it with the Rapido B36s a couple of years ago, and there should be one coming up here soon with the Rapido E8 in the Conrail OCS scheme. But it's just like you pull it out, and it's like opening the door to a new high-end car. There's a smell to it. There's a massiveness to it. And then when you close the door of the car, there's no rattles. There's no shakes. Everything's perfectly set. You know what I mean? You turn this Rapido model on the tracks, and it does what it's supposed to. And that's just super exciting. And then you turn the sound off, and you run it, and it runs like the Kato model you remember from the 1990s.
And what
smooth as glass.
And what how much per unit are they? Like, what was one A unit? How much was it?
I think Rapido lists them for $350.
Yeah, so
I think I got mine for $280.
Yeah, so quite reasonable then.
I think it's for what you're getting. I don't know why people complain about the price of these models.
Well, because they last forever.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I mean,
and
if
they have a decoder, they have working lights. You don't have to add ditch lights or ground lights. Yeah, the Conrail ones here, you do have to add ditch lights to those if you want to do it because they modeled them in the year before the ditch lights were added. But it's not that challenging a modeling project. I mean, it's some work, but you can do it.
It looked like,
or you can run it the way it is. I'm telling you, I can't believe. I think it's a very reasonable price for what you get.
But yours looks like it already has ditch lights. The photo, no.
Mine has class lights, which they come with.
What is what's the light that's right below? Oh, that's probably getting on and off. That's for the step lights. It's a step light, I guess.
Step lights down low. Oh yeah, you're looking at the picture I put online.
Yeah.
Yes, those they call them ground lights or step lights, right?
Now, did you think that only because we're having the conversation, but I thought the light in the cab was too bright. Did you think that?
Oh yeah, and I think you could turn both the ground lights and the cab lights down.
Okay, yeah.
And that's with the ESU Loc programmer, because Rapido uses ESU decoders, the Loc sound decoders. Yeah, you can adjust all of that stuff.
Really?
Yeah, can you imagine?
No.
It's just, it's so this is one of those situations where complicated is good.
Yeah. Yeah. To a point.
It's not every situation, but in this one, it's good.
Yeah, if they could explain it to you easily. That's like the other day when we're in the Florida place. The TV's kind of close to the bedroom, and at night I like to watch hockey. Hockey? I shoot the puck. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a set of headphones. There's got to be an easy way to hook up a set of headphones to my TV. Now, the TV is 5 or 6 years old. It's a smart TV, but it's, 5 or 6 years. And oh my God, it was so friggin' complicated. I threw in the towel and just, I don't know. I can't, like you want stuff to work. And it's like this Conrail E-unit or these Rapido E-units seem to be a home run right out of the box.
I think they are. And just like the RS18U a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And the GP38 a couple months before that. And the Rapido, the Amtrak Turbo Train. Is there a part or two floating around in the bag sometimes? Yeah. Sometimes you got to reattach a piece apart, just like you would for anything that comes out of a box that's been shipped across the ocean. But it's not hard to figure out how that works. The instructions are fantastic. They give you an exploded parts diagram so you can see what parts go where, and they have little dotted lines to tell you where they fit in. And so it's really not too hard to figure out how to do minor repairs. But that Rapido Turbo Train, when I opened that thing up, that came in this big, beautiful box. You unbox it. It goes on the layout. It goes together like super easy, and right out of the box worked perfectly. Everything did what it was supposed to. The lights are the right color. They turned on with the right function. The sounds were where they needed to be. It's just great. It's a great time to be in this hobby.
Yeah, it's always been a great time to be in the hobby, but it just seems to be getting greater and greater as each moment goes by. It's almost
it's amazing. And one of the things that's been weighing me down lately is the amount of things going on in the world that I can't change. I think this is like a central problem for every guy, maybe every woman too, maybe everybody in their 40s, is that you finally start to get to a place in your career, in your family, where things are working. I'm so fortunate to have a wife that loves me when I come home, and that my kids are excited to see me, and I enjoy spending time with them. I enjoy cooking with them. I enjoy doing things with them on the weekends, but they can stand up and do things on their own now. They're old enough now to do their own thing. So I have been able to get into some very early learning steps in my basement with passenger car modeling, because I've had a little bit of time in the last couple of weeks to do that, which I'm not used to, learning how that balance works. But meanwhile, work has been just frustration after frustration. They're moving headquarters for reasons I can't fully explain. But yet we're still dealing with station closures and or partial closures anyway, and mechanical problems on the trains, and delays because of things going wrong that are fixable. And then you got the world stage going on, wild American elections, whichever side you believe in. This was a wild surprise. The world skirmishes between different countries all over the world. And all of this stuff is in your face all the time. And the juxtaposition between my wonderful life with my family and all of this huge stuff, including a bunch of stuff at work, where I'm in charge of a department, but I can't make life easier or better for my employees right now because the company just doesn't see it the way I see it. They've got different priorities than they used to, and different priorities than I do. And at least when it comes to rail stations. And it's a really challenging and difficult time to be there. It's frustrating as heck.
Everything is very goofy. Every time, a day doesn't go by when something isn't goofy. And the biggest problem is the stuff that works, the Conrail E unit that you take out of the box and it works and it's a pleasant surprise. You forget about how much of a pleasant surprise it was, is because of the stuff that doesn't work. It's like you'll try to, while you're trying to enjoy something, 5 minutes later something else doesn't work, and it's like
yeah, there's a part of that for sure.
I mean,
but I mean, when it comes to work,
it just takes this. It's like my easiest example is, if you want to watch a movie from YouTube, you're sitting back in your recliner, you point your phone at the QR code thing on that screen, and 3 minutes later you're watching the movie. It takes it off your PayPal account or wherever you have it, and like 2 minutes later you're watching the movie. Oh, I think I'll go get a pair of headphones for my TV. You think I can get anything to work? Nothing works. I can't even, I plug in a pair of headphones. It used to be you plug in a pair of headphones and you'd be listening to something over, and it's like, oh my God, could this be any more complicated? And you're thinking, how can one thing, everything is so, I see that in my business, I have to deal with a lot of government agencies, and it's like, you run into somebody that knows what's going on, and 5 people that either A, don't know what's going on, or B, could care less if they did or not.
Yeah, that the apathy is starting to sneak in because, look, and again, this is my perspective, 47 years of age. These are the big boy pants. It's time to stand up and be the person in charge of these things. That's where I am in my career. And I've got 16 managers that report up to me, one way or the other through different paths and each other. I've got 150 union employees, millions and millions of dollars of contractors. Like I have a $38 million budget, and I can't affect the change around me the way that I used to be able to do it. I used to be able to get help for certain things. I used to be able to get somebody else to help rebuild a station or platform, or replace an escalator. I could push my management chain to make sure we got the right people in the right spots. I could open up the doors for training to different employees. I could make sure that we were meeting people in the field and making decisions that were in the best interest of transportation for the railroad. And it feels like we're working against ourselves half the time. The old paths to get stuff done are not working the way they used to. And my goodness, I've had some dark nights. It is frustrating as heck to not be able to, because this isn't world politics or a national election. This is my job. And I know I shouldn't be taking this personally as I am, but I take it personally because I really believe in what we have to offer. We're doing the right thing. And today it is not easy to do the right thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Stay in the course and just realizing that there's not necessarily a reward for doing the right thing.
In fact, I agree, but it's even more than that, my friend. It takes a tremendous amount of energy above and beyond what it used to. And then you get criticized for doing the right thing. You don't just break even. Doing the right thing means you're going to get blamed for not doing something else. And why anyone would want to be a public servant right now is I don't know why I signed myself up for this. And work isn't public servant. Transit's a corporation. It manages itself with reimbursement from the government. But my volunteer work in town is all public service, and that can be just as excruciating. It is the amount of energy it takes to get stuff to happen is incredible. Incredible. And so coming down here and burying myself in learning how to model the Conrail OCS train to go with my beautiful new E-units, because nobody makes the cars and nobody makes the right color paint.
What color paint would it be? It's Conrail blue.
No, well, it's Conrail blue if you model the first version of the OCS train in the 1980s. But by 1985, they actually painted it a color they called Conrail Pullman green. And guess what? It's different than every other green out there. And now that Rapido did such a great job matching that green on their E-units, you can't just paint it Great Northern dark green or Pullman green or CNJ green and pretend. No, now you have to match the Rapido E-units.
And
so I'm learning how to mix paint.
That's a dark green. It looks almost black in the photo.
And it's funny because PRR, everybody says, oh, it's PRR Brunswick green. No, it's not. PRR Brunswick green was made using a 55-gallon drum of black enamel paint from DuPont. And into that, you would dump a half gallon to a gallon of yellow powdered pigment. And you mix that all up with a giant stirring brush and spray it on the Pennsylvania Railroad locomotive or the Penn Central locomotive. And what you got was basically black with just a tinge of green if you saw it clean in the sunlight. And you can see it on the PC Heritage unit. Penn Central, it's Norfolk Southern 1173, the SD70 ACE that they painted. When you see that clean, pictures of it clean in the sunlight, you can see that the body color is a different color than the underframe, which is black. So Conrail's OCS is not Pennsylvania Railroad Brunswick green, but it's also not Pullman green. It's not Southern green. It's not CNJ green. And I know because I tried them all and they don't match the E-units. So I'm learning how to strip passenger cars. And I guess I'm sort of answering my own question here. I mean, in the end, why am I doing this? Why am I driving myself to distraction on a plastic model to fit behind my beautiful E-units on the OC? Well, because I can. Here's something I can make better. Here's something I can do that's active. It's not sitting brooding with my dark thoughts or sitting around waiting for somebody to come save me or somebody else to come supply me the paint so that no, that's not how life works. If you want something, you need to go do it. You can contemplate it all you like, and there is space for contemplation. When you're depressed, something bad happens, I would argue it's important to sit and brood with your dark self. Hold yourself in that space and be uncomfortable. It's not fun being upset. It's not fun being hurt or left out or ignored. But it's real. It's honest. But then you got to what you need to do then after you've sat with it for a couple hours or a couple days is decide what you're going to do with that dark energy to improve something else for somebody else.
Well,
what are you going to do?
Being a few years older than you, I think I've come to the realization that being in a dark place is a complete waste of time. And I understand how people get there, but recently I've been having more medical problems, and it'd be pretty easy to get. And I'm thinking and I just think to myself, man, all you got to do is turn on the news, and the fact that I'm sitting in, a beautiful home, and I have pretty much anything I want, and I can watch hockey or whatever. It's like, I'm getting to a point now where it's almost criminal to get into a dark place and feel sorry for yourself, because there are a whole lot of people that are a lot worse off than we are. And it's kind of this funny kind of, you do need to get in a dark place. But I think part of Western world's problem is, you're not getting bombed because of what other people have done. You're not, it's like, sometimes you gotta kind of go.
But I think that's why it is. I agree with you, but the point I want to make is that I think that in the Western world where you're not getting bombed like those poor people every place else in the world seem to be right now, that gives you so much free time. Your life is so good and so easy that your problems become your big problems. Sure,
but that's a responsibility you have to yourself to not allow that to happen.
Correct. It's okay. Hey, you got to honor it. Look, I think that the Chinese were onto something with this whole yin yang. We talked about this years ago on the podcast, and the idea of a perfectly round object, a sphere, with a curved line through the middle, equal parts dark and light, but that the curved line is also curved inside the ball through to the other side, so that the whole thing, there's no straight lines at all. And you may see more dark or more light at certain times, but the sphere itself, the object itself, the whole is always perfectly in balance between dark and bright. My point is that in the Western societies, where you're not getting bombed or blown up, thank God, a breakup or the death of a pet or a parent or a sibling or a friend abandoning you or the loss of a job can feel like the end of the world.
Oh, it can absolutely feel like the end of the world. I'm not disputing that. I got this incredible pain in my legs and I can't get rid of it. And it's something to do with the original cancer medicine, and they're trying to figure it out and blah, 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 blah. And some nights I just can't get to sleep. But then I always end up thinking, and I start thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be so tired. And then I think to myself, yeah, but your biggest problem is you're laying in a comfortable bed on a nice house, and you're going to wake up tomorrow and go to the fridge and get yourself and it's like, I don't think I got that many problems.
Look, you're right. But I think what you're doing is honoring the frustration, the fear, the difficulty of being in a spot, and look, there's all sorts of solutions out there. And one of the things you and I have talked about too is, hey, you never know what's next. Maybe it's worth going to see an orthopedist for your hip. Maybe you've got a bone thing in there that's not cancer related. So but all that aside, the point is you're honoring your pain. You're acknowledging it. You're not burying it by being drunk all the time. You're not burying it by being on drugs or gambling or compulsively watching TV or whatever people do to not deal with their fears and their feelings. You've gone so far as to actually it's part of your medical help to talk through some of these things with doctors. Like you're honoring the dark side of things, and you have to do that. I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is that once you honor it, you need to get your butt in gear and do something about it.
Exactly. It's what I said to you. Like, I understand how frustrated you are with work and the railroad and all that stuff, but it's like I say to you, like, making the world a good place is a lunch pail job. You may never get any recognition for it, but the only recognition you may ever get is knowing that you did your best. And that's a saying I hate. I hate when I hear people say it. And I actually ask myself, you'll hear people go, well, I did my best. And I'm thinking, did you really? Did you really do your best?
Well, and your words echo in my brain on a regular basis now as I'm watching all of my bosses get to retirement age. And all of them are planning to go in the next couple of years. And I mean, who knows if they decide to stay or, in the moment, that can all change. But the bottom line is that there's a very good chance that before I get to retirement age, I'm going to have a choice to make.
Or exactly.
And the bottom line that sits in the bottom of my head is, am I really doing my best if I don't take an opportunity to try out?
Very oddly enough, one of my doctors has a chance to become the head of a department at Sloan Kettering. And I actually have had this discussion with them. Somehow, I don't know, I got sucked into the discussion. And
it's funny how you always seem to be in the middle of these heated discussions.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I can't figure out what the common link is with all of your heated discussions.
But I basically said the same thing to them, is like, because they're very concerned, it's a tumultuous time. Do they really want to uproot themselves? Blah, blah, blah. But it's an incredible honor. It opens up the world to them for their work and their research. And I said, well, at the end of the day, the question you got to ask yourself is, are you going to be okay not taking that chance? Are you going to be okay not taking the chance and saying, you know what, I'm not doing that? Because there is nothing, if I've learned anything in life, there is nothing worse than years later going, I should have tried that. It is much better to fail at something than to have years later gone, maybe I should have tried. You're better off having known that, okay, I tried it for 5 years. I was a complete bust. I failed. But, that's easier to deal with. Losing the super.
I think you're right. It's you can't, and it plays into the larger discussion too. Why are so many people in the United States so angry at politics on both sides, right? And there's a fear. I think Republicans, to some degree, fear that the Democrats are going to destroy the way of life. And the Democrats, to some degree, fear that the Republicans are going to destroy their way of life. It's fear. And it's made worse by misinformation on social media. It is one of the dark sides of social media, walking away. Is that you can't trust anything you see on social media anymore. Unless it's a reputable source. And even then, it gets crowdsourced. It gets modified by AI. There's so much fear and doubt in American society today. And yet, all you have to do to feel good about what's going on in America today is talk to your neighbor. Talk to the guy across the street. Write a birthday card to an elderly relative. There's so much good that you can still do that I think actually psychologically helps you deal with the stress and the fear. In the end, I still maintain that most people have most things in common.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things about this hobby, and one of the reasons I think that you and I will continue to do this podcast forever, is I actually feel like we're creating a service here by having these discussions, because the hobby is really, if you want to be like Scott and build your models stick by stick, building a structure stick by stick and scratch building a structure is an incredibly rewarding thing. Or learning how to build passenger cars and all the work you're going to have to do to create these passenger cars. But what I keep coming back to is, in your particular, like, I've been looking through all the stuff I've published in Model Railroader, and it's just like there's a massive amount of stuff. And yet there it is. The beauty of being published is that, you're not just going to build these like, you need to be taking pictures.
I am. In fact, I can't wait I'll share some with you later. This is a Walthers 442 sleeper. It came in like Atlantic coastline. And my I'm gonna build a whole article about this, I think. And actually, I'm wondering if it isn't going to be the next book topic.
There you go.
But
what would that be? Passenger cars?
Modeling passenger trains.
Oh, yeah.
I've been back and forth with the editor of Model Railroader and the guy in charge of Kalmbach Books, Eric White and Jeff Wilson, respectively. And it hasn't been done since 2006. It was another Andy Sporandio book.
There you go.
So big shoes to fill, but I hope I did him justice with the Yard book that recently came out. And I'm getting into because I have to do it because these Rapido E-units are so nice. So I bought a couple Walthers passenger cars off eBay, $15 each. Some fire sale. Some guy was selling, new cars that he was never going to use. These now the lighting kit you have to buy separately, but there's a lighting kit, a drop-in lighting kit, LED.
Where do you get that from?
You get it from Walthers.
Really?
On the instructions, they have a whole bunch of stuff listed. You can basically, there's 2 or 3 different lighting sets that fit all of their different passenger cars. Everything from the dome cars to the sleepers to the coaches to whatever. And they do 4-4-2 sleepers. They do 10-4 sleepers. I don't even know what these numbers mean. I still don't know what they mean. This is what they call the style of car. So I have a lot to learn. But you open it up and like it's an assembled model with a diagram on how to take itself apart. And there's probably 70 parts to these passenger cars.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at one now. I'm looking at Walther's 442 Santa Fe Super Chief Indian name. And it's a 442 sleeper. And yeah, it's a cool kit. So, and then it comes with, you can get lighting as well. And it's molded, with some of you have chairs and beds inside. So Conrail had 1 or 2 sleepers in the office car special, the OCS fleet. But one of the beautiful things about model railroading is that I don't have to model the cars Conrail actually had in the 90s. I can choose a couple of numbers from their fleet. I think they had like 1 through 12 and then 24, 25 and then 31 and then 100 or so. They skipped around. I can choose a number close to the fleet that actually existed and create my own office car that would complement their fleet and be part of the proto freelance route of the Onondaga cutoff. And who you could ask for some technical guidance? Who would be thrilled to be asked for some technical guidance?
Who?
Todd Treaster.
Oh, you're right. At least for the E-units. I've actually been back and forth with him about the E-units so far.
He probably knows everything there is to know about the passenger cars too.
He is such a character. What a pleasure to have him on the podcast.
I know. What a
great addition.
A great addition. And I highly recommend to anybody out there, if you ever get a chance to contact Todd Treaster and see his layout, you will not be disappointed.
That's a fact. Yep. He's a wonderful host as well.
And the thing about Todd.
Hell, you know what? You could do that while you go to the station inn on your way to Springfield.
Yes.
On your way home from Springfield. Coordinate with Todd ahead of time. And the same day you arrive at Crescent, you can go to Todd's layout. It's an hour from Crescent.
Yeah. Actually, that can become a thing, is going to Todd's layout from Crescent.
Well, and an hour further is the East Broad Top, the resurrection of a narrow gauge steam railroad in Pennsylvania.
That to
absurd.
Me, that just, it blows me away.
And it should. It's incredible.
It's going to be just absolutely amazing. It is going to increase the interest in trains and model railroading. So, I had a thought. Let me see if I can think.
Yeah, well, let me finish my 442 discussion.
Okay.
While you think of your thought. So, I opened this thing up, and it's Atlantic Coast Line. So I learned how to strip paint. I'd never stripped a whole car of paint before, believe it or not. I'm 47 years old, so I did the whole old isopropyl alcohol trick, and sure enough, like a charm, it works.
Wow.
It's incredible. This thick oil paint on these passenger cars comes off in sheets after 25 minutes.
Really? I'd be afraid to do that, but of course you paid $15 for it, so it's not the end of the world.
Well, and this is part of the whole larger theme of not being afraid to try stuff, right?
All right.
Like you can do it. And just as the internet told me, the isopropyl alcohol did nothing to the plastic. The plastic is like it came out of the mold yesterday. It's brand new.
Really? And is it like completely stripped?
Lionel, I had to scrub it a little bit with a stiff brush. I used an old toothbrush, and unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Wait till you see the pictures. So while that was going on, I found some green paper for my kids' craft thing upstairs, and I found, the if you buy an Atlas locomotive, the gray foam that's between the handrail and the car body, Ath and Genesis, they also use that gray foam. I was like, so I cut that into pillow-shaped pieces. I cut the green paper and I made the beds. So all the beds in my 442 have a pillow and a blanket now. So that when you turn the lights on in the car at night and you look in through the windows, you're going to see made beds.
I hope you're taking like 1,000 pictures.
Wait till you see this. Like, I am having so much fun with a $15 former Atlantic Coastline 442 sleeper that's going to be Conrail 44, or make up your Conrail OCS car number.
Yeah.
And it's gonna. And I was able to. I fooled around with the paint colors. I mixed the paint, and I have a big bottle now of OCS green. It's damn close to the OCS green paint. I'll send you that picture too tonight. It's like a whole new hobby.
That's it. And now is a perfect time for my thought.
There we go.
So you're always, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get, we are all guilty of this. And one thing I've tried to do over the last 10 years is, I've talked about this before, is, due to the circumstances, I tried to teach myself how to slow time down, and, thinking that there was limited time left, I better slow it down. And, so one of the things that we're just terrible at is trying to get the future just right. And your particular personality is very much suited to, okay, I want it to be like this. I want it to be like that. If I do this, it'll turn out like that. It'll be I want it to be a certain way. And when you just talked about, passenger cars, that'd be a great book, Passenger Service. I'm thinking, it wasn't that long ago when you were thinking to yourself, I signed up to do another book and I'm not sure, and yada, yada, yada. And it's turned out so well because you had already done one. The second one was that much easier. Doing, another book and another book and another book, it's like falling off a log now for you. And part of the problem for you right now is you're trying to steer everything to get the result you want that's 3 years out, that you really don't even know what tomorrow's going to bring.
That's true. That's part of the fear. And it's a curious fear, because for me it's different than it used to be. Thanks to getting published in Model Railroader, and then shortly thereafter being in touch with you, thanks to Rich Wisniewski, and thanks to being part of the greater operating community before all of that. But since then, being able to be published again in Model Railroader, and then be on the cover of Model Railroader and Railroad Model Craftsman, and 2 books now, with 3 books if you count the self-published one, and this building inertia that's going on here, not to mention the podcast, which to me, your podcast uniquely allows a deep dive conversation, because it's not 20 minutes long. It's not, it allows you to go deep with people where you see fit, and what you create is better. It's to me, it's top shelf. You can really get to know somebody in the hobby by listening to them talk on AML, and I think it's fantastic. So you add that element. So the panic that I had in 2016, 2017. I'm not watching trains as much. I'm disappointed in the industry with the way that they were cutting things and changing things. I'm at home with little kids. I can't get out. I'm building this model railroad that I think is pretty good, and I'm having a great time operating it, but it's hard to share it. I want to share it with other people, like a slideshow, right? Yeah. But there's and I'm feeling this fear, and this goes back, through therapy. I realized I've got a shadow side from losing my mom so early and losing my sister a little bit later. I've seen people I love die when I was young. And what that does is it makes you scared that you're not going to have time to get stuff out there that you feel you need to get out there for the common good. How am I going to make sure this stuff is out there for people to absorb, so that little kids someday like me have the opportunity to be inspired and keep this whole thing going. So thanks to all these wonderful opportunities and a lot of good luck and a lot of hard work, I don't have that fear anymore. I'm not worried because it's out there. If people want to know what I'm doing or see what I'm up to, it's out there. So if I stay healthy, which I hope is going to be the case, I plan for it to be the case, and it is the case right now. God, the sky's the limit. I mean, there's another whole second half of life to figure out how to keep this going.
Exactly. Like you got a good solid 35 years ahead of you of making a contribution, and my contribution time is starting to wind down. But I was just thinking while you're mentioning that, we try not to, these Uncle Dave Fireside chats, again, as soon as you came online, I push the button, we start talking. We don't talk ahead of time. Sometimes we'll say, oh man, I'd really like to, I'm looking forward to it, having a chat, but that's about as far as it goes.
That's true.
And I was thinking while you were saying that, and we've talked about it many times before, but it's not anything we can't continually mention, is, your mother passed away when you were 17. Then very shortly after, your sister had always been struggling with her health, and your dad worked very hard to help her, and then she passes away a few years later. And both tragic, tragic things, except they were probably huge advantages in what made you you. It's like
isn't that the strangest? Like,
yeah,
I guess, to be honest, I guess that this is where you're going, is that 3 years from now, you don't know what disadvantages now are going to be opportunities later.
Exactly.
That's a really good. I never thought of it that way, Lionel, but that's an excellent point.
Yeah, it's the most bizarre thing.
Talk about the human condition.
Yeah,
what a mess.
Well, it is and it isn't. It's like I've done so much. Like we've had these talks and we've talked about dark places and all that, and I've talked about my friend John, who was at my side, and then his family, his mom and dad, and him and his brothers. They literally suffered from deep, deep depression. And up until I met John, and up until the end of the last few years of his life, I really didn't understand, or I'll even say believe in people being depressed. But when I saw it firsthand, and I was one of his right-hand men to try to help him out of it, man, it's a legitimate thing. People that are legitimately struggling with mental depression, it is a legitimate problem. And John's passing changed me in a million ways, and I wish I'd never experienced it, but it made me a better person. It's like these horrible things turn you into a better person, and it's the most bizarre. When you're in a dark place and you're thinking, oh my God, oh my, and yet it almost always turns out to be a plus. It's bizarre, but it almost always turns out to be a plus. Not a plus so much in as, hey, gosh, I'm so glad my mom passed away, but it gives you fuel. It's fuel. It fires the hybrid engine. It's the kind of special fuel you need in that hybrid engine to make it work.
I think that's another great analogy. You're onto something tonight, my friend. I like it.
Well, I've been really, I'm irritated up the yin yang because I can't get my legs to work, but it's kind of like I can hobble around with a cane. But like I was at poker last night, and people that hadn't seen me for a few months. One guy hadn't seen him and he's a very, very, very nice man, and he's a pastor at a local church, and he's like, oh man, and I said, finally, I had to say to him, I said, Ed, I don't need your sympathy. The last thing I need is sympathy. It's just the way it is, man. It's just the pitch I've been thrown. Dance with who brung you. You just got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and go, well, this is what today is, and you either quit. Really, life is very, very simple. You either quit or you keep going. Those are your two choices. And
yeah, I mean, really, every day, that's a fact.
And I learned that from walking from Toronto to my house, 100 kilometers. I did that 8 summers in a row until I couldn't do it anymore. But I would be amazed at on the third and fourth day when it was like, oh my God, I'm 67 years old. This is killing me. It's 1,000,000 degrees out. But if you walk teeny tiny, very small steps and very, really slow, you turn around an hour later and you can't even see where you were. It's like, just keep moving. It's like, those are your two choices. You either quit or you keep going. Now, sometimes
do something even if it's wrong, right?
Yeah, sometimes the keep going isn't much fun, or it's horrible. The keep going part is about as far away from fun as you can get. But those are your two choices: quit or keep going. And if you keep going, there's something ahead. There's always something ahead. There's always something ahead that's going to come around the corner that's going to go, okay. And it's like these, it's like I've learned more about F units tonight and E units than I have in the last 40 years.
Oh my God. Well, that's this hobby. If you want to keep going, this hobby is your companion.
Exactly.
There is always something more to learn, and you're going to be a better modeler for it. You're going to be more interesting for it, and you're going to start to appreciate the world outside more because of it. Everything this hobby includes is important someplace else too.
Yeah. That's the crazy part about this hobby is it's a very valuable life tool. Because at your absolute worst, you're feeling like crap, you don't feel like doing anything, but you can turn to the hobby and add one more stick to that structure.
And it's something.
Yeah. Like
it's never perfect, but it's something.
Yeah, just an hour a day, or do one thing like our buddy Tom Jacobs or Chris Adams says, or sometimes I'll work on the podcast for 10 minutes, but you come back to it and there's been 10 minutes of work done on it. It's like, oh, all right, I'm already down to this part now. It's you got to two choices: quit or keep going.
Yeah, in the end, it's very much a responsibility, as you've said.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. What a long road, but boy, it doesn't make it any easier when you go up against stuff you can't change.
I like
watch people screwing things up, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I won't go into too much detail, but part of my business is a franchise operation, and the guy that owns it now is just a complete screw up. It's like, and and I was down at the head office there 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I'm 70. I'm not interested in your modern day shit, right? I'm not interested. Just make it work. Can you not just make it do the job you're supposed to do? That's
all. We're not asking for much, man. Nah, nothing. Just give me the advertised.
Yeah. Their big thing is we're going to have all the employees on tablets, and it's all going to be on tablets. And once every 2 weeks, the whole computer system shuts down. And the guy goes, "You're still using paper." And I go, "That's because your computer system keeps shutting down. If you weren't so friggin' cheap and you'd rebuild it." But it doesn't, So anyways, I'm going back and forth with this guy. And finally I said to him, "You know what? You're the fourth owner in 10 years. There's nothing you're going to say to me that I'm interested in. It's like being on a bad hockey team. You're like the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's like it's been 60 years. Just win the Stanley Cup. I don't need all your friggin'. Just win it."
No more excuses, please.
Yeah.
Just the facts.
Yeah, we don't need
the facts.
We don't need to know that the ice was bad that night or anything like that. Just win it, will you? And that's kind of watching you. It's like it's the same thing with the books. Like, man, that'd be a great third book, and I can hear it coming out of your mouth. It's like, yeah, I can do a book. It's not that big of a deal because you've been down that road twice, and it's like you build experience. And part of what you're going through at transit. It's just the experience you're going to need to make improvements 5 years down the road.
Well, and part of the experience of building my first freelanced OCS car with the right green and a detailed interior is to teach me that I can do passenger cars too, and that there's another whole world of the hobby I've never even touched before. Yeah. So the other thing I got sitting here is Tom Schmieder bought a someplace online, he found an auction, and somebody was selling a brass HO scale brass model of the Hickory Creek.
Oh yeah,
which was one of the 20th Century Limited observation cars, 1948. And it's been resurrected and runs now with the United Railway Historical Society. The URHS has Hudson River Rail excursions in the spring and the fall, and they run it out there from New York up to Albany and back. Well, Tom did the usual Tom Schmieder magician work with his electronics. Everything this guy touches is done so well, such a high level. And says, hey, I did the lighting. I replaced the trucks. Now it rolls like glass. It's a beautiful model. It's ready to go. It's painted and decaled. You do the interior. And I'll be darned. So I'm gonna do that one too.
Well, that'll be cool.
Stay tuned.
And you don't seem like an interior guy to me.
No.
I think people that model interiors of structures or cars or things, I think that's a part of your personality. Like I was never an interior guy. I was never interested in building interiors of anything.
No, I love my details, but I love the details that you can see out in the open. My interior philosophy, I can tell you right now, is going to be the Alan McClellan philosophy of good enough. I'm not going to, I'm going to paint the floor. I've already painted the floors of this 442 sleeper, and it's a little uneven and it's a little up on the edges. And you know what? I don't care, because it's going to be inside a passenger car that's going to be lit. So you'll see inside a little bit. And if you look really close at night, maybe you could, but if you're looking that close inside my passenger car at night, you're not understanding what the OC is about.
Yeah.
This is not going to sit on a shelf. It's going to be going by you at 80 miles an hour and stopping at a stop signal for a little, or whatever. It's like, it's that too. But I think it's a good exercise for me to have to be patient and make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 beds. So if they call it a 442 sleeper, why are there 10 beds? How does that add up?
Yeah, I guess there's 4 people in one bed and 4 people in another and 2 people in another, and there's 10. I don't know. This is passenger car stuff. It's a whole different world. It's a bizarre part of the hobby. It really is, because it was such a huge. Jackie Gleason had that train that went from Los Angeles to Miami when he was moving his show, and it was like passenger rail. That era from say 1945 or 1940 to, but even if you go after World War II, if you say the prosperous times of the United States, 1945 to the late 50s, rail travel was spectacular. It
was where it was at, man. Yep.
Yeah. And yet what is that? Maybe a 13, 14 year span because
that's it. But it's so burned into the American psyche, and especially for model railroaders and rail historians. But I think that's where I could add a really interesting perspective for a modern book on modeling passenger trains.
Absolutely.
Sure, you do a chapter or two on the way things used to be. But every other passenger train book has a chapter on each, has the 442 sleeper chapter, and has a 10-4 sleeper chapter, and the cafe car chapter, and the dining car chapter, and nobody today cares. Well, I shouldn't say that. People care, but the majority of younger modelers today have no concept of what any of that means. That's black and white pictures in a Bud car book. It's not what you put on your layout today. But model, but doing modern, using Rapido stuff to do modern Amtrak trains. Walthers makes beautiful Amfleets. Cato, Walthers, and Athearn Genesis and Rapido all make different bi-level passenger cars. You've got the turbo train, you have the train sets that was never available before. That's all here. You've got commuter stuff that's available, and you have all these. It's a whole untapped chapter. Or book really. It's multiple chapters of stuff. So I think linking the historical passenger train modeling and then showing how young kids can model modern commuter operations would have a real position in the hobby, I think.
I think making that connection from the old to the new and all in one book would be a real asset to have in anybody's library.
I think it'd be fun.
And I want to, you got to let me write at least a couple of paragraphs or something. I haven't been in either of the first 2 books.
Oh, do you like passenger trains?
Well, I can write something, can I?
If it's about passenger
You
trains,
seem
yeah.
well. Yeah, you seem to have ask everybody and his brother to be in your yard book.
Well, these are guys that either worked in a yard, designed yards,
Okay.
or
Or
you know what I mean?
Or
Like,
what? Or what did Ralph? Where did Ralph Heist do as far as working?
he wrote a book on the Lehigh Valley's waterfront terminals.
Oh, okay.
So that's what we got to do is choose a book topic where you got an expert
I don't need that
sidebar you can do.
I could do a third of a page just about Dave doing passenger trains, and it would be interesting. It'd be my favorite article I ever wrote in Model Railroader by a mile. There's nothing that comes even remotely close to it that was actually quite popular. It was another big Alan McClellan spread when the layout had moved to the new house. And in there, two columns, 2/3 of a page was my story about buying donuts and getting to run the V&O for the first time. So there's no reason why I couldn't put a little sidebar in your book about something about Dave that people wouldn't really realize. My job in your book should be I'm the Dave reporter.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah,
because I don't think anybody else would write something like that anyway.
Exactly.
That'd be kind of cool. Well, all right. Let's talk. Your agent and my agent can get together and we'll figure it out.
All right, my people will contact your people.
I like it though, and I'm honored. Thank you.
Rapido Trains.
Your fast track to model railroading fun.
If it's N, if it's H-O, the fast track is Rapido.
Look at that. We've completed another Fireside chat.
I enjoy these. I look forward to them. And we didn't even get to talk about re-railers and staging.
No.
We really haven't talked too much about the 4208, the Conrail GP40 that's going to be debuting on NJ Transit this winter. Yeah,
like go write those things, put them in a text and send them to me, and I'll write them down for next time.
Yeah, okay.
Or at least write them. I actually made notes this time.
There's so much thing. It's just so much fun.
I've actually realized recently that to make the podcast better, I need to start making notes. And I wrote down open house, your work session at Schmieder's place, your computer upgrade, train watching with the boys there back around the 1st of November. And then with the Rapido E8s, you talk about Bobby and the CRHS and Wes and Brock, and I was going to ask you about those.
Oh, I mean, that's another whole discussion too, for sure.
Yeah, but we're out of time.
Well, hey, until the next time.
I'm going to start making the podcast just a teeny tiny bit shorter, around the hour and 42 minute mark.
I like it.
Yeah,
it's still plenty of time to get into some deep stuff. And we've had a great conversation tonight. I wish everybody listening to this the opportunity sometime here as we go through the holidays and the darker months, the modeling season months, as they say. Everybody here can find time to go to a restaurant or a tavern or a railfan spot of your choice with your choice of company and have a good heart-to-heart discussion about what's scaring you in life. Go out there and take a chance. See what happens when you share your fears and your hopes with somebody you're close to. See what happens. I think you might see a little more brightness on the horizon if you do that. A conversation like you and I had tonight. It's just two guys having a good talk. I love it.
I'm afraid I'll never be able to play golf again, but it's kind of like, oh well. Oh well.
Yeah, but that's a real fear because you love it.
Yeah, but it's like if I can't, it's kind of like, oh well.
Well, yeah. Right. What are you really going to do?
Exactly.
I mean, it is what it is. You know what you're going to. You can model a passenger car. I can tell you how to get started.
That's been
Lionel, I'm telling you, this is fun. I'm having a great time.
One of my greatest assets in my whole life, where most of my teachers thought I didn't care and everything, is I always had an ability to go. When something happened, I always had an ability to go, oh, well, it's already happened. Let's figure out how to improve. Let's figure out how to fix it or correct the situation or whatever. I've always had that ability not to dwell on whatever it was that did happen. It happened, which gives the impression of I don't actually care. I do care, but what's the point of dwelling on it? It's already happened. There's nothing you can do about it now.
There's a lot to be said for moving on, letting things go. We're in the fall season right now in North America. It's okay to learn to follow the trees example and learn to let things go.
Yeah. All right. That's it. We're done.
All right.
Can you give out our email address?
I can. You can reach us at modelerslife@gmail.com. That's one L like civil, not two L's like LED lighting.
Wow. Look at that. Civil like as engineering.
Yeah.
And LED lighting like as in look at you go. I love that passenger train book idea. That's a no-brainer. If that's already come up in discussion, just say you'll do it. Tell them you need a little bit more cash flowing across your fingers.
Oh yeah, it's the contract part of it has yet to be put together. They did offer me unlimited access to the archives. Basically, I could give them ideas of what I wanted for photographs, and they would find the photographs. But I also have access to all the back issues of Model Railroader, and a lot of the pictures will be available through the 50s, 60s, 70s with guys modeling the stuff back then. I could recycle a bunch of pictures from that, and that's stuff that most people haven't seen. Who some of us do, but most younger guys do not have the August 1967 Model Railroader on their desk.
No, the Model Railroader needs to come up with a way to digitalize their entire library.
Oh, it's out there. Yeah.
Well, it was, but it's not out there now, I don't think.
I think it is. I think it's back up finally.
Oh, is
on
it?
the new website. Yep.
Okay. That's good.
But yeah, it's huge because talk about a resource for the hobby. So yes.
One of my favorite things, I've mentioned it many times before, but one of my absolute favorite things about writing for Model Railroader was access to the library. They had a fantastic, I don't wonder, so did Crown Media get the library that they had?
I believe they did, but that's a good question. I know there was discussion of it. I'm trying to remember if the discussion included Fire Crown taking over the library or the library going someplace else and still being available.
Yeah, because I
remember being pleased with the outcome of that, though, because that's one of the greatest assets of Kalmbach was for both trains and Model Railroader. Their library of photography is incredible.
Well, and that's another thing going back to periods. I feel like I was hanging around Model Railroader during the glory days.
Oh, I think so too. I don't think anybody can argue that when the magazine was 160 pages in the holidays.
I just had this thought too. Yeah, 160 pages. It was like you could. 1994 is when you first went to Crescent and had your first contact with Todd Treaster. Mm-hmm. 1994 is when Todd started working for the railroad, Conrail. 1994 is when my first article was published in Model Railroader.
And it's the year I modeled on the OC.
Yeah.
And the year I got my driver's license.
Yeah. I think this passenger car you're building should be like 94 or 940 or something.
Well, 1990. Yeah, that's an idea.
Or not 1940, but 1994, but just put 940 or something.
Yep, that's. And don't forget, I'm gonna do a whole train of these. I'm having so much fun. I might as well go ahead and keep going. I'm gonna have a fantasy OCS fleet, and then if somebody ever does the right cars, I can add those to the fleet as they come out. And I can have a 12-car OCS train. It'll be great.
And if you missed our email address, if you go to our website, amodelerslife.com, and scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a picture of the moderately agitated mailboy in a particularly agitated state. And all you got to do is click on the picture, and the email address comes up, and you just fill in your subject and your text, and boom, hit send, and away you go. And we love getting emails. Pro or con, we love getting emails. You got something you want to complain about what we do on the podcast? Send us an email. We'll be happy to read it. I don't care about getting criticism. I care, but I'm happy to read it.
Yeah, well, look, hey, I mean, it's nothing gets better unless you know what's wrong.
Exactly.
I'm always open to hearing what I can do better. I think it doesn't feel good, but it's the right thing to hear.
And I think we can all agree that I'm rarely wrong, so it's not my earlier problem.
Yeah.
You and I have that in common. You and I have that in common.
Oh yeah. I'm definitely. I don't have many opinions. I'm kind of quiet. Yeah, I don't talk very much.
I know. It's like yeah. So and then what else? And if you like this podcast, and you'd like to have twice as much podcasting a week, you can join our Patreon channel, and there's also a link for that on the website, amodelerslife.com. And you just click on that link, and for a few cents a day, you can have a second podcast every week on Tuesday. Monday is free. Tuesday's our paid channel. It's our down home channel. It's our back porch channel. We're a little, we're not too restrictive on the subjects, and it's just a fun channel. It's a fun channel. What I've come to realize is with all the model railroading podcasts, it seems like there's one cropping up every other week. I think the thing that makes us different from everybody else is ours is entertainment. This is a podcast that's centered around model railroading, but primarily produced to entertain you. And
I think that's a reasonable approach to it. Yeah.
We're the late night show of model railroading.
I think that's apropos.
Yeah.
Yes. Good call.
And if you'd like to know more about the OC, the Onondaga Cutoff, and Dave Abeles, and behind the scenes, there's also a link to his Patreon channel, and you click on that, and boom, twice a month, you get a video about what Dave's doing now.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun on that channel, and that very much is the backstory of the Onondaga Cutoff. I take you on the modeling adventures. We look at new locomotives. We look at adding grab irons to the staircase on the way down so that you can guide yourself to the railroad.
That was cool. That actually that made me feel good because I'm thinking, okay, I think I can make it down there again.
Well, it's one of the things I was thinking about is like, look, there's a lot of guys in the hobby getting older, and a lot of people struggle down those steps. It's not a big wide staircase. You have to as a good friend of mine said, it's like climbing into the Keebler elf tree.
Exactly. It's like going to the Keebler elf cookie factory. And if you look at, there was not that long ago, a few weeks ago, the great layouts. It was the cover picture was the Keebler cookie tree.
I love it. So the OC Patreon channel is, again, it's a paid channel, but it gets you access sort of behind the scenes on the Onondaga Cutoff. And we even have a t-shirt level. So if you subscribe at the t-shirt level, you'll get a t-shirt a year after a year of membership. And that's a custom t-shirt for Patreon customers only, your own Onondaga Cutoff apparel. And which is a lot of fun to see people out of Springfield wearing their OC colors. Isn't
it fun to see people wearing their shirts, like whether they're AML shirts or the OC shirts? It's like,
I think it's great.
It's so cool seeing people do that.
Yep. I've been able to extend that at Transit too, like making sure our special events have apparel that goes with it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
There's wonderful camaraderie that comes from that, in my opinion.
And we also have a t-shirt level on the Modeler's Life. And if you go to our t-shirt level, then you're entered into a contest that is sweeping the globe. And it's called, Hey Dude, Where's My Shirt? Because once a year you get a shirt. Now the question is, when do you get your shirt? Some people seem to get them right on time, and other people not so much. And it's like it's a contest that is sweeping the globe.
Oh, at least it's consistent. That's good.
Exactly. I think that's it. I think we've covered everything. Oh yeah.
All right.
Have you ever wanted a t-shirt with no, we don't need to. Oh, this is the free channel. Have you ever wanted a t-shirt with a hot dog on it?
Absolutely.
If you go to Midwest Model Railroad and their URL is midwestmodelrr.com, got to get Stephen Atwell back on here. And you go across their navigation bar to other, and on the drop-down menu is the AML shop, and boom, you're in a cornucopia, a wonderland of AML merchandise, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, whatever you could possibly need. And in there, you'll find a t-shirt with a hot dog on it.
I love it.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So remember, a Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
people modeling passenger cars for the first time.
Now it's time for the New Jersey Transit Elevator Escalator Report. Whether you want it or not. Take it away, Dave.
Good morning, everybody. Plainfield westbound's out this morning for some door modifications. They're going to adjust some of the equipment hardware that came in yesterday, so that should be back later this afternoon. Ridgewood number 2 is out. Vendors en route to take a look at the doors on that one. Those doors are open. At Woodbridge, we had a report of an ADA customer stuck in the elevator. The vendor went there and found the elevator operating normally, so that's back in service. Newark Penn number 9 is out with a skirt panel replacement project, same as last week. And Secaucus number 2, that's one that's out for its step chain replacement and a lower carriage assembly adjustment. So that's still going to be with a good date there of December 1.
It's another Lincoln Homer.
I love that idea of the book. That's a no-brainer.
I think, this is something Jeff Wilson suggested.
Well, that's good. If they suggest it, then they're all behind it already then.
Oh, for sure. And that's great. But he suggested it.